build this collaboration, these tensions with Germany. Yes. A glance at the comparison of the two economies, Germany and Vietnam, pretty similar in terms of the area and population. What you can see, the big differences are GDP per capita, so we have quite high GDP per capita, but Vietnam is growing very fast. So this is the trend. In Germany, it remains at the same level or growing very slow. We are quite old, developed economy, and we are growing very fast right now, currently. What do you need to know about Germany? It's the biggest industry in the EU and good gate to the EU market. So once you collaborate with German partner, for example, you collected some references from Germany, it's a good starting point also to look for other partners, for example, in other European countries. Working with Germans is good reference, and of course, once you exported goods to Germany and you went through this whole procedure, you can repeat it in collaboration with other companies from France, for example, Austria, Poland, and so on. We are the biggest country from the EU in terms of FDIs here in Vietnam. Probably you know also a lot of German well-known names here that invested. Bosch, Continental, Adidas, Puma, a lot of investments, big investments here in Vietnam. And we are, Germany is the biggest, or Vietnam is the biggest partner for Germany in terms of exporting goods to Asia or to this region. Yes. Okay. Good. Current challenges: accelerating the diversification of the supply chain, as I mentioned. Yes, the strategy that we followed 20 years ago needs to change because of some external events. For example, I will present you them in a minute. What had a big impact on the diversification of the supply chain in Germany, and it was, for example, or it is, for example, the renewable energy transition. What is happening right now in Germany and in whole European Union? It means Germany and other economies from the EU try to decrease the emission of CO2, and that's why we try to produce as much energy as possible from renewable sources. Of course, it requires a lot of investments, and it's not easy process because a lot of new technologies and so on should be implemented. And this whole costs need to be carried by people, consumer, and companies. And of course, we had in the recent years a lot of crises, like for example, Corona had a very bad impact on this topic. War in the Ukraine, so we still use quite a lot of fossil fuels to produce energy. And because of this war in the Ukraine, for example, we need to diversify supplies, and it costs, of course, in a bad way, the price development. That's why right now one of the most expensive energy costs in the EU. That's why, especially, for example, in the steel industry, like we have big energy consumption, the companies from Germany try to outsource the production outside. Because if they would like to stay in Germany, the competitiveness is no more there. We are too expensive. But it makes also some opportunities for companies from the region, from Vietnam. So Germans currently are looking for suppliers from here, from the region. You have still like low energy costs in comparison to Europe. The labor force is there, and you are flexible. For example, if you acquire new order from Europe, US, and so on, you are able to scale up very fast. You will find people, energy not a problem at all. In Germany, we have to struggle, or we are struggling with this problem right now. The next development that has a big impact on this supply chain diversification is digitalization of the economy. And it doesn't only mean that we need to digitalize the factories, use Internet of Things, AI in production, and so on. But also it's about the digitalization of the whole society. So people should use more digital tools, also with German institutions, universities, and so on. Of course, it's not so complicated right now because from the one hand, you have a lot of different applications, solutions that you can implement. Companies use also different systems that need to be integrated, for example. And of course, the problem is here that you need people who will integrate this, who will monitor this, who will develop, and the cost is of course very high in comparison to, for example, developers from Southeast Asia. That's why here there is also great opportunities for companies from here, like being active in this IT sector, to offer your services for the European companies. And we see, for example, that FPT software, they provide these solutions to Lufthansa, to Adidas, to Airbus, Bain, so big names. And it's not only about monitoring some services, it's about developing their systems that they use, for example, in the planes. Yes, demographical change and shortage of skilled labor. This is also another problem we are facing currently in Germany. You have much younger society, more labor force, more younger people, also very flexible in terms of, I don't know, working hours and so on. In Germany, it's very strictly regulated. A lot of young people don't want to work in the factories, you know. They want to work, I don't know, in the universities, more ambitious positions, but like factory work, it's not so attractive. We have a lot of factories in Saxony located, like producing cars, for example, Volkswagen, BMW located at Leipzig, Porsche, probably you know also. And the problem is that people working there come, for example, still from Eastern Europe, like from Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Slovakia, because we don't have enough our people on site who want to work in the factories. That's why here also your services in the production area to German companies, and German companies are also forced to look for alternatives in the supply chain. Interesting here statistics about how long German companies look in average for some positions. How long are some open positions open? In Germany, and if you take a look at manufacturing industry, in average, the German companies look or need 169 days to find the right person for the position. You can imagine 169 days. And probably here it takes, I don't know, several days to find the people. Of course, the problem is that very often they have very specific requirements for the position. That's why it takes longer. It's crazy, almost 170 days. And in the construction industry, for example, it's even longer. It's over 260 days, open positions. So yeah, that's why, as I mentioned, we are forced to diversify our supply chains and to look for alternatives outside Europe. And Southeast Asia is a very interesting area for us. Yes, some characteristic of the supply chain, how did it work 20 years ago, and about this change. So 20 years ago, we were focused mainly on collaborating with Eastern European countries, so-called new EU member states. These are the countries that entered European Union 2004, 2007. And of course, they had a lot of advantages, like the loans, the salaries were small in comparison to Germany. A lot of labor force, for example, short distance, so German companies could build a factory or acquire a subcontractor, for example, in Poland. It was quite uncomplicated to travel there, to talk, to make controlling and so on. That's why a lot of companies decided to invest here and also in the Turkey. But of course, now the country is also step by step developing. You can imagine, for example, 20 years ago in Poland, the average cost of hiring staff was in manufacturing sector, it was between 500 and 800 euros 20 years ago. Now it costs between 2,500 euros and 3,000 euros. So you can see the price development. So in terms of the prices, Eastern Europe it's no more so attractive as it was 20 years ago. It's changing. People also want to earn more, want to develop themselves and so on. Not many people want also to work in these manufacturing sectors, for example. There is also very strict law of environment protection also in the Eastern Europe. That's why we have to also decrease emissions and it costs also a lot of cost. That's why, of course, the distance is short. That's why it's still, for some companies from Germany, attractive to invest there, but not each sectors. Steel industry, no more attractive to collaborate with some partners from Poland, for example, because the costs are also developing. Economic and strategic autonomy became a priority. Important to mention about this, what caused this development, that we want to build this strategic autonomy and flexibility. You can imagine how dependent we were with the collaboration with China. Probably you heard about these problems with delivering chips to the automotive sector during the Corona pandemic, this hard shutdown of the economy. It showed us that if you are too dependent on one economy, one supplier, it can cause a lot of problems. And we noticed it during the crisis. And it was the same, for example, with Russia and delivering fossil fuels and so on. If you are too dependent, it can cause problems. That's why the strategy of the companies and of the federal government is to diversify. And a lot of companies looking for different partners from different countries, even like in case of any, I don't know, natural disasters, wars, whatever, you will still have suppliers and our factories will still work because the components will be delivered. This is the lesson learned. Yes. Here are some statistics about Germany's leading import destinations. As you can see, our main partner in terms of importing goods, it's still China. The reason is that all the big players from Germany, like Bosch, Mercedes, all the automotive manufacturers and so on, still collaborate a lot with Chinese suppliers. And they still import a lot of, I don't know, parts or components from China, and it makes, of course, the volume quite high. If we perceive the EU as one market, this is our biggest partner market. Because you can see Netherlands, Poland, Italy, France, Czech Republic, Austria, Belgium, Spain, it's all European Union. So they are our strongest partners as a whole in terms of importing goods. Vietnam plays still quite small role, but it's developing and quite fast. A lot of companies looking, especially now after this whole crisis and so on, towards Vietnam. For some companies, they are still not aware of how fast the economy is developing here and so on. How great you are in technology development, for example. And this is also the task of the Chamber of Commerce, of us, to promote a bit, you know. Especially young companies, SMEs, smaller companies from Germany, from the region, they are not aware at all of this. That's why we need to work on this to provide them with information, with some experience, with some success cases also from other companies, that they should consider taking a deeper look at the Vietnamese market and collaboration with Vietnam. Here also some interesting statistics from 2021. It doesn't matter, it should give you impression of what do we import from Vietnam right now. And if you take a look, a lot of spare parts, plastic parts, textile, of course, as I mentioned, big factories as Adidas, Puma are present here. And what is interesting, they don't have their own factories here. They work with suppliers. So they say what we want to produce, these are our requirements, this is the quality you need to ensure, and the Vietnamese companies produce the products, deliver to Germany, for example, or to other European countries or worldwide, and this is how does it work. So it's not always necessary that the German company will build factory here, hire staff and so on. Sometimes they just have here an office and they collaborate with some subcontractors. Iron and steel products, it is getting more and more important also, and the volume is increasing because, as I mentioned, to produce iron and steel in Europe right now under this strict environment regulation and costs, it's hard. It's too expensive, simply. Yes, but not everything is going well and so on and easy. There are also some challenges in building supply chain with Vietnam, and for example, especially for Vietnamese companies, sometimes it can be quite complicated to work with German companies. In some cases, of course, it will be easy, you know. The Germans want to produce some simple products here, you are able to deliver, no problem. But in some cases, the Germans want to produce very innovative parts, for example, complicated, using some special materials not existing here, and it need to be imported, for example, from the third countries. And this can cause some problems, challenges, you know, to meet, for example, the requirements. You need to show your certificates. You need to make sure that the quality required by the German company will be supplied. But as I mentioned, like if you need to import some semi-products, some rare materials, for example, from third countries, it can cause that the whole process will take longer, will be more expensive, and so on. And that's why, for example, the customer from Europe can decide, okay, if we need to import first some semi-products to Vietnam, assembly here, and then to import to Germany, they may decide to produce it, I don't know, in Thailand. It can be like the result. Yes, and in some cases, you as Vietnamese can feel a bit overwhelmed with the whole product requirements, with the whole paperwork and so on. Like our bureaucratic machine is quite big, and we require like certificates, a lot of talks, and this quality management and so on. It can be for you for a first approach much, but it's not impossible, of course. But there are also some challenges from the German perspective, like Germans having fear because of, I don't know, some infrastructural challenges. They are afraid that if your factory is located, for example, too far away from the main harbors and logistics centers, it may cause also delays in delivery, for example, additional costs and so on. Communication, cultural challenges, or cultural differences. Of course, communication, like English should be like the common language for both sides, Vietnamese and German. The problem is sometimes also even in German companies, not all people speak English. That's why it's not only that here from the Vietnamese side it can be challenging. Labor quality and training issues is perceived as a challenge, but from the other hand, we see also a lot of German companies collaborating with Vietnamese suppliers, deliver also trainings for the staff and showing how to produce, how to do, to make sure that the quality of work will be like increased. So this is like about collaborating both sides, the German side and the Vietnamese side. You provide labor force, they can provide also some additional trainings and so on to increase the skills of the people, and this is like in the end win-win situation for both sides. For example, environmental risks are also very often mentioned by the German companies, investors. For example, like the events, negative events like this hurricane and so on may cause that the factories, for example, will need to stop, and it can cause some delays in delivering goods to Europe. Yeah, it can happen everywhere, so it's not only about Vietnam, it can happen also in other countries. So it's, yeah, of course, they mention about this argument, but as I mentioned, it can be everywhere. Yes. That was all from my side. I think Ms. Wong should be here somewhere. Her part will start in a second. From my side, thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can feel free to ask me. Wong is there. Great. I will be here with you today, so if you have any questions about Germany or partners from Germany, feel free, we can discuss. I can show you or present you a bit how do we support Vietnamese startups willing to find a customer in Europe and so on. So we are open to discussion with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
So the next presentation is on about German, and you already know German, right? Dạ, không biết là nãy giờ thì cái phần chia sẻ của em thì các anh chị có theo kịp không ạ? Dạ, em cũng biết là có một số anh chị là mình chuyên về thị trường Nhật nên mình mạnh tiếng Nhật, chuyên về thị trường Trung Quốc thì mình mạnh về tiếng Trung Quốc. Đức với bên này họ nói tiếng Anh, không biết là người Đức nói tiếng Anh nó cũng khác với người Mỹ hay người Ấn hay người Sinh nữa, cho nên là các anh chị có câu hỏi gì không? Hay chưa? Dạ. Hồi nãy cái lỗi của em xin lỗi là em quên không có nói về cái chương trình ngày hôm nay. Mình sẽ có 2 phần là từ lúc khai mạc cho tới 10 giờ 30 thì là mình sẽ ngồi ở đây nghe các bạn Đức chia sẻ. Dạ, em cũng sẽ tranh thủ một vài phần để em được chia sẻ. Sau đó thì mình giải lao 15 phút và bắt đầu mình sẽ chia ra 3 khu vực. Phần này thì sẽ những doanh nghiệp, các anh chị có thể tham khảo về những cái giải pháp chuyển đổi số. Em cũng xin giới thiệu thêm là ở các doanh nghiệp sản xuất và cái giai đoạn mà bắt đầu giai đoạn này ở Việt Nam mình chuyển đổi số, doanh nghiệp sản xuất mình cũng đã thử một số cái giải pháp nó hiệu quả ở phần nào đấy và cũng vẫn tìm kiếm những giải pháp mới. Thì câu chuyện là sản xuất mình tập trung vào sản xuất, tuy nhiên để mà đầu tư về nhân sự và nguồn lực mà am hiểu về công nghệ chuyển đổi số thì nó là một cái bài toán khó hơn, nó khác hơn. Thì bạn Gunther Hoffman bên Laser Texas, các bạn ấy có một cái giải pháp là các doanh nghiệp mà không có thế mạnh về công nghệ vẫn có thể sử dụng giải pháp này. Dạ, cụ thể như thế nào chút nữa bạn sẽ giới thiệu với chúng ta. Thì em cũng gợi ý là các anh chị cứ dành thời gian là mình đến có khoảng 10-15 phút trao đổi trực tiếp với anh ấy để mình tham khảo về giải pháp này. Điểm thứ hai nữa là bởi vì khách hàng của anh này cũng là ở Đức và các cái thị trường lớn ấy. Chúc anh giới thiệu thì các anh chị sẽ thấy trên cái bản đồ của anh các cái khách hàng cũng tương đối lớn và họ cũng có nhu cầu về những supplier. Đấy thì mình làm network, mình tạo cái mối quan hệ để giới thiệu chéo cho nhau. Chứ còn em cũng nói trước luôn là với anh này ấy, thì mình không có bán hàng cho người ta được. Anh không có đi mua hàng. Nhưng mà có 2 bạn trẻ này, bạn trông trẻ nhưng mà suốt mấy ngày qua đi cùng thì đánh giá rất là cao về cái nhu cầu phát triển của các bạn ấy. Thì các bạn này là các buyer, các bạn ấy thực sự là sang đây với một cái list danh sách là những gì các bạn ấy cần sản xuất ở Việt Nam. Thì em cũng chia thành 2 phòng phía đằng sau này, City Leipzig này và phía đằng sau bên này. Thì có 2 bạn tách ra thành 2 nhóm, chúng ta sẽ cũng lần lượt từng doanh nghiệp vô khoảng 10-15 phút trao đổi, gọi là hẹn hò nhanh chớp nhoáng đó, speed dating. Thì mình đi thẳng vào vấn đề luôn, list hoặc là cái gì, năng lực của mình là cái gì. Xong nếu mà sau đó mình thấy rằng cần phải nói chuyện sâu hơn nữa thì các anh chị cứ chủ động đặt lịch hẹn. Dạ, các bạn rất là thích đi tham quan nhà máy, mình có thể mời họ đến trực tiếp nhà máy của mình. Tuy nhiên thì cũng xem cái lịch các bạn trong tuần tới. Bên Phương cũng có sắp xếp nhiều hoạt động rồi nhưng vẫn có một cái số thời gian trống để các bạn vẫn có thể có những cái lịch hẹn mới. Đấy thì mình cứ chủ động ạ. Dạ, rồi thì hôm nay em xin phép được chia sẻ một số cái nội dung về câu chuyện là làm sao để mà đem cái sản phẩm dịch vụ của mình mà tiếp cận gần hơn với lại người Đức, với thị trường Đức. Thì không dám múa rìu qua mắt thợ, bởi vì các anh chị đã kinh nghiệm lâu năm trong ngành nghề của mình rồi, trong lĩnh vực của mình rồi, thành ra những cái thông tin này nó về mặt cơ bản lý thuyết hàn lâm thì nó giống nhau hết, nhưng thực tiễn cách làm thì em chỉ chia sẻ ở một số cái điểm nhấn chính. Đấy là cái điểm đầu tiên khi mà mình đến một cái thị trường mới thì mình hiểu về con người, về văn hóa, về vị trí địa lý. Thì ở Đức ấy, chút nữa 2 bạn này sẽ giới thiệu với anh chị một cái bản đồ. Họ có những, trong tiếng Việt mình tạm gọi là những cái khu kinh tế trọng điểm đi. Việt Nam mình có nhiều khu kinh tế trọng điểm đúng không ạ? Và nó đã là trọng điểm, ở đó nó có những cái trọng điểm và thế mạnh riêng của nó. Tuy nhiên thì ngành nghề trong đó cũng khá là đa dạng. Giống như là sang Việt Nam chỉ cần đến thành phố Hồ Chí Minh gần như cái gì cũng có, không thiếu. Dạ, nhưng mà ở Đức ấy, thì nó có một cái sự chuyên biệt, chuyên môn hóa cao hơn. Ví dụ là về mảng về manufacturing á, thì nó phải đến cụ thể khu vực bang nào, thành phố nào đó, chứ không phải cứ đến Frankfurt là có đủ, cứ đến Berlin là có đủ, hay cứ đến Munich là kiếm mình tắt. Dạ, thì chút nữa các bạn này cũng sẽ giới thiệu cho mình cái phần đấy. Điểm thứ hai, những cái thông tin trên này thì nãy bạn Wojtek cũng có chia sẻ trên cái slide của bạn ấy rồi, về đặc điểm của nước Đức, rồi dân số, nhu cầu hiện giờ, xu hướng làm sao. Thì em cũng xin lưu ý thêm là ở cái kênh mà gọi là những cái thông tin này thì chúng ta có thể tìm kiếm online qua các hiệp hội, có thể đi ở các cái phái đoàn delegation hoặc các hội chợ. Thì có một cái điểm mà em muốn lưu ý trọng tâm, đó là chút nữa trong quá trình trao đổi các anh chị có thể thấy các bạn ấy có nói là mặc dù những doanh nghiệp mới hoặc những doanh nghiệp mà nhu cầu họ nhỏ thôi, khi đi kiếm sục sinh ở Việt Nam và Đông Nam Á, các bạn cũng rất quan tâm đến các chứng chỉ, chứng nhận về vệ sinh an toàn lao động, về môi trường. Dạ, công nghệ thì là cái gần như bây giờ người ta cũng không bàn nhiều đến công nghệ nữa, vì cái mức độ phát triển khá là tốt rồi, thì họ quan tâm đến những vấn đề này khá là nhiều. Mặc dù là cái đơn hàng họ chỉ có vài trăm, vài ngàn thôi, nhưng họ cũng sẽ hỏi là cái mức độ sẵn sàng của các anh chị, ví dụ như các anh chị có BSCI chưa, hoặc là các anh chị có nhận thức về C3 như thế nào, ready cho tương lai chưa. Ở trong cái khu văn phòng này có 2 công ty sục sinh. Đằng sau lưng các anh chị đây là Tigo, bên phải phương bên này là River. Họ là các công ty sục sinh cho những chuỗi bán hàng lẻ ở Đức. Ví dụ như anh River này, anh có hơn 2.000 chuỗi bán lẻ, cả về tiêu dùng và cả về các mặt hàng gia dụng, thiết bị điện tử, xây dựng, vân vân, rất là nhiều. Anh bên này cũng thế. Thì cái danh sách sục sinh của các bạn ấy rất là nhiều. Và các bạn ấy cũng chia sẻ là ở Việt Nam bị một cái vấn đề khó là nhận được hồ sơ của các supplier rất là nhiều, nhưng rất khó để lựa chọn, bởi vì cái tiêu chí trong 2-3 năm trở lại đây của họ. Câu hỏi đầu tiên, anh chị có BSCI chưa? Đó. Và ở đây AHK trong mấy năm trở lại đây họ cũng làm rất là nhiều chương trình hướng đến câu chuyện là về kinh tế xanh, kinh tế tuần hoàn, ESG, trách nhiệm xã hội, rất là nhiều. Thì cái phần này thì các anh chị cũng lưu ý định hướng trong cái chiến lược phát triển của mình, và cũng là một cái để nếu mà mình đã có thì nó là thế mạnh của mình để khi mình đi bán hàng mình giới thiệu. Rồi một cái nữa, những cái chuẩn mực này thì gần như là Phương thấy là nó là standard rồi, đúng không ạ? Doanh nghiệp nào cũng có, thì chỉ lưu ý thêm cái phần này thôi. Rồi về mặt ngôn ngữ, xây dựng mối quan hệ, người Đức họ làm kinh doanh họ không có như Việt Nam mình là nhất quan hệ nhì tiền tệ, thì cả hai điều đó ở Đức họ không có. Họ yếu hơn mình về mặt này. Và khi Phương đưa các bạn Đức qua bên này thì cái điểm này là cái điểm đầu tiên Phương cũng lưu ý các bạn. Các anh chị có thể quan sát trong cái cách giao tiếp bình thường, Đức họ không có cái chuyện sau giờ làm là cùng nhau đi uống bia, hay là khách hàng mời đi ăn nhậu rồi nhiều khi chốt đơn hàng ở trên bàn nhậu. Đức hoàn toàn không có chuyện đó. Hoàn toàn không có. Làm việc với nhau thân thiết đến bao nhiêu năm chưa bao giờ họ mời đến nhà, chưa bao giờ họ mời đi ăn, là bình thường. Đấy. Rồi ngôn ngữ, Đức họ nói tiếng Đức là ưu tiên, giống như người Việt mình gặp nhau là nói tiếng Việt. Tuy nhiên mình là rất là linh hoạt. Vâng cũng giới thiệu với các bạn này một cái từ khóa keyword của mình là flexible. Alo phút trước phút sau, nửa tiếng sau đến gặp nhau họp là bình thường. Còn Đức là họ lịch hẹn có khi cả tháng chờ, cả năm chờ mới đến hẹn đấy. Thì khi các anh chị làm việc với người Đức cũng lưu ý những cái điểm rất là nhỏ này. Mình đêm hoặc cuối tuần nhiều khi khách hàng hỏi vẫn trả lời, họ thì không. Đến cái kỳ nghỉ hè, nghỉ lễ của họ là họ off hoàn toàn. Có gấp đến mấy họ cũng không dễ ủng hộ này. Thế thì những cái điểm này thì sao? Để mà trong những cái kênh làm marketing của mình ấy, thì hôm nay Phương cũng đi đến nhiều cái doanh nghiệp, Phương rất ấn tượng về cái năng lực sản xuất và mọi thứ của mình. Cái gì mình cũng sẵn sàng, cái gì mình cũng có. Tuy nhiên ấy, ở mức độ mà để tận dụng được nó thì chưa cao. Phương lấy ví dụ này, doanh nghiệp nào cũng có website. Doanh nghiệp nào cũng có website. Có doanh nghiệp là có nhiều thứ ngôn ngữ khác nhau, nhưng mà độ chính xác về mặt ngôn ngữ ấy, thì nó vẫn còn yếu. Mình chưa có đầu tư về SEO. Chưa đầu tư về SEO. Thường thì Phương cũng thấy một cái số đông các anh chị nghĩ rằng là cái mảng tiêu dùng nhanh, bán hàng lẻ gì đó thì người ta mới đầu tư về SEO. Còn mình manufacturing thì mình không cần. Dạ thưa là khách hàng mới bao giờ mình cũng mong, đúng không ạ? Lúc nào mình cũng muốn là có thêm khách hàng. Tuy nhiên ấy thì vẫn có những cái nhóm khách hàng họ chủ động đi tìm người bán hàng. Họ tìm bằng cách nào? Thời đại số rồi, mọi thứ là phẳng hết rồi, họ lên online họ tìm. Nhưng Phương nhận được rất nhiều cái phàn nàn. Đầu tiên là: ơi Phương ơi, tìm thông tin ở Việt Nam khó quá. Thứ nhất là về mặt ngôn ngữ. Thứ hai, họ đưa những từ khóa tìm kiếm là không hiện lên nhiều. Dạ, cho nên là Phương cũng gợi ý cái này để các anh chị tham khảo là mình có nên đầu tư về SEO hay không nha. Chứ còn nếu mà website chỉ có thông tin vision, mission, giới thiệu công ty, công nghệ, sản phẩm thì hiện giờ mình đang làm tốt điều đó rồi, nhưng mà chỉ cần đầu tư thêm về SEO nữa thôi thì sẽ đạt hiệu quả cao hơn là những cái nhóm khách hàng lẻ người ta chủ động tìm kiếm được mình. Lẽ là một, rồi giới thiệu là hai. Ở này là Phương với anh Quốc share cho Phương cái list danh sách công ty rất là nhiều. Phương cũng nói cho em profile công ty, cho em xin website công ty, Phương gửi cho các bạn này xem xong các bạn rất là ấn tượng. Xong đến khi đến, trời ơi Phương ơi, ở đây họ còn làm tốt hơn cả trên những thông tin kia rất nhiều, mà tại sao trên kia thì không thấy, và tại sao lúc ban đầu khi chúng tôi chủ động đi tìm chúng tôi không thấy mà phải qua giới thiệu mới thấy. Dạ, đó thì ở góc độ này Phương xin chia sẻ thêm hàng ngày ha. Rồi tìm kiếm đối tác ở đâu thì Phương giới thiệu với các anh chị ở Đức. Nếu mà thực sự các anh chị quan tâm là mình thông qua những thông tin tham khảo từ bài chia sẻ của anh Wojtek, cái xu hướng ở Đức bây giờ, thứ nhất là dân số già, họ thiếu người lao động, họ thiếu thậm chí là hơn 90% các doanh nghiệp Đức cũng là các doanh nghiệp nhỏ, doanh nghiệp gia đình đó các anh chị. Dạ, họ thiếu cái đội ngũ kế thừa, cho nên cái nhu cầu họ phải đi outsource sang các nước khác rất là cao. Thì các anh chị có thể cân nhắc là đây là những cái key contacts để mình tìm kiếm, chủ động tìm kiếm là một, liên hệ là hai này. Thì nó còn một cái kênh nữa, một cái cách nữa mà ở một cái slide trước Phương lướt qua, đó là cái slide về chiến lược tiếp cận thị trường á. Thì ngoài cái chuyện mình tìm khách hàng, mình xuất khẩu hàng đi trực tiếp hay là gián tiếp gì đó rồi, thì có thể cân nhắc đến một cái hướng nữa là mình phải hiện diện ở Đức. Mình hiện diện ở Đức. Các bạn Đức sang bên này, khi các bạn làm business ở Việt Nam á, các bạn cũng lý do mà AHK ở đây họ thêm cái khu vực này là gì? Các văn phòng đại diện họ phải hiện diện ở đây, họ phải am hiểu ngôn ngữ văn hóa kinh doanh ở Việt Nam thì họ mới làm tốt hơn. Ở Đức không có văn hóa về lobby, phải là hiện diện ở đây họ mới hiểu, họ mới làm được. Nhà bọn Phương tư vấn rất nhiều, nói rất nhiều, và nói thời gian đầu gọi là mình nói cho đầu gối mình nghe chứ họ không hiểu, tại vì họ chưa từng, bên họ không có. Cho nên đến khi là gì phải có người ở đây am hiểu về cái thị trường này họ mới phát triển được. Thì với Việt Nam mình cũng thế, mình phải có cái sự hiện diện ở Đức, văn phòng đại diện bán hàng, hay là cái hình thức khác như là joint venture, anh chị partnership với một cái nhà phân phối ở bên đấy, hay là với một cái doanh nghiệp sản xuất ở bên đấy, để thứ nhất mình có được cái tiếp cận sâu hơn thị trường đó. Cái thứ hai á là cái cập nhật công nghệ từ họ nhanh hơn, tốt hơn mình, và cái chuyển giao công nghệ. Thì ở Đức họ có một cái đặc điểm như thế này nữa, là chính phủ Đức họ có rất nhiều, ở bên đó họ quản trị theo bang, mỗi bang họ có những cái quy định, những cái luật, những chương trình khác nhau cho bang của họ, và mỗi thành phố, mỗi city họ cũng có những cái chính sách khác nhau. Thì với mỗi một doanh nghiệp Đức khi mà họ đi phát triển ở một thị trường quốc tế, họ có thể tự chủ động viết một cái đề án xin ngân sách chính phủ hỗ trợ cho câu chuyện đào tạo, chuyển giao công nghệ. Cuối cùng cũng phục vụ cái mục đích bán hàng của họ thôi, hay phát triển kinh doanh của họ thôi. Tuy nhiên họ vẫn nhận được cái ngân sách hỗ trợ của nhà nước. Ví dụ như Phương là có khách hàng khi mà anh này anh chỉ là anh gia công cái bo mặt của anh ở Trung Quốc, anh đem nhập về Đức, xong anh lập trình tất cả mọi thứ gọi là chất xám ở trong đó, xong anh đem cái sản phẩm đó anh bán sang Việt Nam. Sang Việt Nam rõ ràng anh là người bán hàng, mình là người mua hàng cho anh. Thế nhưng mà cái chiến lược của Phương kết nối cho anh là kết nối cho anh với anh đó là sản xuất cái bo mặt điều khiển thang máy á các anh chị. Thì kết nối cho anh là nếu mà mình nghĩ bo mặt điều khiển thang máy thì mình bán cho các công ty thang máy, đúng không ạ? Dạ không, tôi không bán cho các công ty thang máy, không kết nối với các công ty thang máy, mà kết nối với cái anh sản xuất tủ điện công nghiệp. Dạ, thang máy nào cũng cần có tủ điện hết. Và cái anh kia đã sản xuất tủ điện công nghiệp thì cái phát triển kinh doanh, cái network của anh tốt hơn rất là nhiều. Và cũng có những cái bước đầu tiên chỉ là một cái sample, hai cái sample thôi. Nhưng mà dần dần tới sau 2 năm thì phát triển khá là tốt. Hiện giờ thì vẫn đang còn phát triển ngoài thị trường phía Bắc, chưa có xâm nhập vào thị trường miền Nam mình, nhưng mà khá là tốt. Và cái thời gian đầu tiên ấy, gọi là Phương hỗ trợ cho bên doanh nghiệp đó là cái đề án để xin hỗ trợ của chính phủ Đức là gì? Thay vì họ bán hàng họ phải đưa nhân sự của họ sang đây đào tạo, nhận chính sách của hỗ trợ của bên kia thì họ có được cái ngân sách đó rồi, nhưng mà cái khả năng để mà phát triển nó sẽ nhanh hơn so với chuyện mà cá nhân công ty nhỏ lẻ tự làm. Thì kết nối là gì? Doanh nghiệp của Việt Nam với Hiệp hội Thang máy Việt Nam và với một cái trường đào tạo nghề về thang máy, để mỗi lần chuyên gia họ sang đào tạo thì những anh kia cũng được tham gia, và nó sẽ nhân rộng ra nhanh hơn, tốt hơn so với chuyện là anh này đi sang đào tạo đúng cho khách hàng mình phân phối. Dạ đó, họ có rất nhiều cái chính sách khác nhau. Thì do đó là nếu mà mình có cái sự hiện diện mình ở Đức ấy, mức độ am hiểu của mình về đó nó sẽ tốt hơn rất nhiều. Thì cái này chia sẻ để trong trường hợp là doanh nghiệp mình thực sự quan tâm sâu đến thị trường Đức. Và một cái nữa đó là cái kênh mà đi các cái hội chợ, thì ở đây Phương cũng có liệt kê ra một số cái hội chợ trọng điểm. Thông thường Việt Nam mình ấy là nhà nước mình có rất nhiều chương trình hỗ trợ hàng năm đưa doanh nghiệp đi hội chợ rất là nhiều, và thông thường mình chọn những cái quy mô hội chợ quốc tế. Hội chợ quốc tế thì đến đó là buyer là đến từ khắp nơi trên thế giới. Thế nhưng nếu như doanh nghiệp mình đã đặt cái chiến lược là mình chỉ tập trung vào thị trường Đức không thôi ấy, thì mình nên nghiên cứu thêm cả những hội chợ chỉ dành cho Đức và những nước trong khu vực nói tiếng Đức. Dạ, giống như ở Việt Nam mình thì có nhiều cái hội chợ quốc tế rồi, nhưng vẫn có những cái hội chợ trong nước và nó chỉ tập trung cho cái thị trường nội địa đó thôi. Đó, cũng có những hội chợ B2B cho thị trường nội địa, đúng không ạ? Đó, thì Đức cũng thế, thì mình phải tìm hiểu thêm về những cái kênh này. Dạ. Thì Phương xin kết thúc cái phần chia sẻ của Phương ở đây, vì thời gian cũng hơi hữu hạn, bị lối giờ mấy bạn tiếp theo rồi. So now I switch to English. Yeah. I would like to invite Ataka come to present. I will em sẽ gửi cái file này cho các anh chị, nên là các anh chị không cần chụp hình đâu. Dạ, chụp hình có em cũng được, nhưng mà slide sẽ gửi sau. Dạ. Dạ đây, nó nếu chụp hình này nè. Mọi người có khác hay có đó cứ tự nhiên nhé, mình không cần phải cứ ngồi một chỗ không thôi. Dạ, có câu hỏi gì thì cứ đặt câu hỏi, và phần nào cần lại hỗ trợ phiên dịch thì cứ tới.
Đây chị.
Đây. Cho chị xin ly nước đi chị.
Okay.
Cool. You have some water?
Yes, sure. Cho chị một ly nước. Thêm 2 ly nữa.
Should it
It's
you
scanning.
recognize it?
I think it's scanning.
Chị chồng bao nhiêu hả?
Maybe in the meantime you fix it, then okay. What should I do now?
There we go.
Okay.
So, feel free to stop showing that. So, first of all, thank you for organizing. Thank you all for coming here today to Deutsche Haus. My name is Leon Heiss. I'm the managing director of Atakan. And in the next minutes, I'm going to show you together with Karl, Elas, we're going to introduce you to our business, and we're going to talk a little about the German market environment as a whole. So, I guess that's not going to go away, so I'm just going to go ahead. There we go. So, Anagon is a young company founded in 2020 on the south of Germany at the Munich high-tech cluster, which I was going to talk about a little bit later. We are focusing on high-tech customers, mainly from the area of biotechnology, wireless communication, robotics, and also less high-tech applications like household appliances, education, and the event industry. So what do? We are a service provider for electronic products. So we develop electronic products for our customers and clients. Our clients have some idea they want to have in shape of a product, but they mainly don't have that much of a clue about how to develop the product. So we are a full service provider. We take the idea to the finished product. We do everything from the concept development, so we get to understand the product itself. We get to understand the needs of our customers. We get to understand the restraints like costs, like materials or regulations. And based on that, we come up with a concept for the product or for the market that we then can develop or can be developed somewhere else. We do circuit design, PCB design software, so the whole electronic side. And on the other side, we also care about mechanics and do enclosure development, as well as everything in between, like connectors, antenna strips, and so on. In Germany, we currently do prototyping, so we produce small amounts of the products in our workshop in South Germany. And then we also do consulting for mass production. So we help our customers to adapt to their needs for mass production. And after this, that's the step which we came to with Namfor. That's the mass production outsourcing. So this is new. We want to provide the service for our customers in the future. So we are looking to get some suppliers for our products. And on the other hand, we are also looking for suppliers for products we currently have. So later on, we can have a look at some samples for each of you who's interested. And these samples we want to have produced in Vietnam. Maybe something comes up. Great. And in the end, product. So the idea is that the customer doesn't have to touch the hardware at all. We want to also do logistics together with you if it's like business customers, so that the manufacturer and the assembled product can be shipped to Germany to the customer directly. So they don't have to interact with everything concerning the hardware at all. This approach the customers that don't have that much an idea or resources for development specifically works for our customers, and to understand why that is and why we choose to target these customers, Karl is going to go ahead and give you a little overview about the German market.
Yes, exactly. So hello from me, first of all. I'm Karl, partner from them. So now the first thing that's different in Germany, I would say, and I would say a special thing of the German industry is that it's quite reliant on small or medium-sized companies, the so-called Mittelstand. Like here, for example, you can see the company turnover by size, so number of employees, compared to the USA, and it's already quite apparent that there's quite a big difference. Considering that it's an established economy. For smaller economies, this is also true. Now, another thing is that the Mittelstand and the larger enterprises, like the big names, the car manufacturers, etc., are very tightly interwoven. So often the Mittelstand, the smaller, medium-sized businesses, provide some niche solution and supply them with some niche technical parts. And this is a long-standing relationship. So this is a very tight network. As you can see in the map, this is a lot of different German companies, mostly medium-sized to large companies. It's also very clustered in Germany. So you have the heavy industry with a lot of the car manufacturers in the very west. And then also, for example, as Jan already mentioned, in Munich, more electronics and high tech, where also we are situated. Now, on the other side of these large companies, of course, we have also a lot of very small companies. And this is, I would say, the most interesting part to break into the German market. Since usually the large enterprises and the Mittelstand are very slow moving, since often the Mittelstand is family owned and also family managed. So they're very risk averse and don't like to, well, move fast and often adapt very slowly and aren't very flexible in their approach with partnerships and etc. In comparison, the smaller companies, which we are also trying to serve, are way more flexible and faster reacting. Now, as I already mentioned, these larger companies might be very hard to start partnerships with, since they're so established already in the market and have a very tightly knit supply network. So we think that this might be one of the big challenges if some of you maybe plan to start looking for a business in Germany. Also, the smaller businesses, this also extends a little bit to the Mittelstand, depending on which company we're talking about. Often are looking for niche solutions or giving some niche solutions, which often also obviously changes the price expectation of the parts in comparison to the larger companies. So this is also something that obviously is easier to start off with a more price leeway and not a very hard price demand from the start. Yeah. So here you can see like some of the roughly the progression of companies either looking to go to mass market, but also a lot of these smaller and medium-sized companies looking to just fill a certain niche in Germany with very specialized technology. So yeah, this is something that we think might be interesting for exactly targeting these kind of points first to break into the German market, and then starting off with these partnerships, looking to, obviously if possible, scale and try to find the mass market as well. Yeah, so another thing we wanted to talk about is our experience with the cultural differences in Germany and Vietnam. Now, obviously, we came here, we heard some things, but we were very pleasantly surprised by how open you are in comparison to Germany. So this is like a common thing that in Germany people take very long to warm up with and often start off very cold and, well, not very familiar. Another thing is that in Germany, that's something very important, that the main focus when doing business is just on contracts. That's in the end everything that counts most of the time. So that's something that's very different, I would say, to here as well, I guess. And of course, in the end, punctuality. Usually it's expected that you are on time, and even if you have traffic, it's expected that you plan around it and at least tell your partner very early if you know that you're going to be late. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to go ahead and stress some key points that I already mentioned. We are targeting very small companies. Why are we doing that? Because at the end, you might suggest that there's more money in bigger companies. We are stressing the business with young companies and also startups. So young companies that are coming out of university, for example. They have developed some key technology and they are very young. They just founded a company and they don't have the personnel and they don't have the time to train personnel. So that's where we get into that. So they want a fast product. They are a fast-moving young company and they potentially actually have the money on one side to pay for validation of the product. So it's very few pieces, but they want to get some of these out on the market, and it doesn't matter that much that these are cheap products. That's part of the investment strategy. On the other hand, when there's like specialized business-to-business providers with very specialized solutions, these solutions can cost a lot because there's not that much competition on the market, especially with young companies coming out of universities. They have some technology that's maybe patented. There's not that much other solutions on the market. They can claim a hefty price on it. And of course, we, on the other hand, can claim some money for developing these customized solutions and also for producing them. So that's also interesting for you. Maybe you're more focused on the bigger companies. We had some trouble here in Vietnam finding the companies that are willing to produce fewer parts, because mostly it's few parts, not much money, much parts, much money, right? So this isn't true for every sector, and we want to encourage you to also have a look at the small companies that are having very tailored solutions, because for tailored solutions you can also recommend, you can have more hefty price tag, right? So which key points should you take from this little market overview? It's first of all the reach of the Mittelstand, so the small and medium sized enterprises, SMEs, which have a huge role in German economy, and which are providing all the big manufacturers. If you are going to target the German market, make it attractive to outsource. Wojtek, briefly talked about that. So currently there's problems like a shortage of skilled people. There's very expensive energy, and there are now also free trade agreements with, for example, Vietnam. So there are quite some attractive points to get companies to outsource. The problem with that is that many of the companies, especially in smaller and medium-sized companies, are do have a very, I'd say, old mindset. So they started out in the 70s or 80s, mostly family-owned businesses, and what they did so far with only working in Germany or only working with the countries around Germany worked so far. So they think, why should we change it? And I guess that's one of the main problems also if you're going to fairs or to companies in Germany and present your product. There's still some holdback in the companies to really outsource their product. So you of course have to make it attractive. And one thing that's often overlooked, of course, small companies. So try to get into the small companies. Don't be scared by their small number of products. Mostly if it's a German company with a small number of products, it's an expensive product. So there's also some money for you to take away. But let's get back to why we are here. So why Atacam is in Vietnam. We mainly want to source four product groups. So first of all, it's metal processing products and services. The same for plastic, then electronics and services overall. I've seen most of the parts are represented by some company that's presenting today. We're just going to briefly go over all the product groups so you have an idea about the kind of product. First of all, it's metal enclosures. For the product, by the way, we will have a look at on certain products if you're interested later on. So in the matchmaking sessions later, we have some examples of each product, so that we can give you an idea about what we're really talking about. So first of all, metal enclosures, mainly for electronic products. We are looking for services for design and manufacture. Then metal stamping parts. Mostly very thin parts for contacts. We require plating, and on some of the parts really high tolerances. These are always a mass product. So tooling for these and design for tooling is also interesting for us. Then CNC turned parts, also mostly small products in high quantities, so contacts. CNC mill parts, mainly for also enclosure design, either front plates of enclosures or mechanical parts like linear rails or yeah, just some parts to make the enclosures look nice. Then injection molded parts, we're also looking for tooling and design. We have requirements for the surfaces, so etched or textured surfaces are our interest, as well as services like overmolding, 2K molding, and inserts. Then there's the electronic side. We are looking for someone to produce PCBs. So far, that's been difficult for us. So either if you do that, or if you know someone, that's going to be very interesting today. And for the PCB, also the PCB assembly, mainly SMD assembly. And we are also looking for partners to develop very simple parts. So we saw earlier, we do the full service, and if there are some parts that don't require the designer to fully understand the whole product, and it's just simple parts like breakout boards or simple processing cards, we look to outsource these as well. So the whole design process. And lastly, it's cables and cable harnesses, either for assembly or just spare parts for the Great, that's it from our side. If you have some questions, feel free to ask now.
Mọi người có câu hỏi gì không? Mọi người có thể hỏi, em có thể support translate mọi người.
I see there are none, so we are looking forward to matching with you later on. Thank you.
So sorry. So you done. Any question for him? Mọi người có câu hỏi gì cho bạn này không ạ? Yeah. Gunther, you can connect with your laptop. Vậy thì trong cái chia sẻ của bạn ấy có chiếu cái phần mà các cluster đấy, là các anh chị thấy rồi đúng không ạ? Là cái phần mà hồi nãy Phương có lưu ý, có nhấn mạnh đấy. Thì mình sẽ thấy một số cái khu vực tập trung của những cái cluster nào. Tại vì nó cũng đa dạng. Có những anh chị á, cái mạng sản xuất của mình là những cái linh kiện thiết bị cho ngành đường sắt đấy chẳng hạn, thì nó ở một cái khu vực khác. Cho ngành sản xuất ô tô chẳng hạn thì nó ở một khu vực khác. Đó. Nó cho những cái ngành về đóng tàu chẳng hạn thì nó ở một khu vực khác nữa. Thành ra là những cái đó có thể mình lưu ý thêm. Nếu như mình đặt cái trọng tâm là mình khám phá đi sâu vào thị trường Đức. Thì ở góc độ nghiên cứu bên Phương ấy, thì hồi nãy anh cũng có chia sẻ với anh Thành bên trung tâm là mặc dù cái trung tâm xét nó nằm trong cái trường đại học, thì cái chức năng của nó là gì? Liên kết giữa hàn lâm, khoa học với lại các ngành công nghiệp industry. Thì bên Phương có 3 cái chức năng. Thứ nhất là đào tạo thì thường các anh chị nghe thấy nói là đại diện của đại học Leipzig thì cứ nghĩ là sang đây tuyển sinh, đi sang đấy học cao học, đại học nghiên cứu sinh gì đấy, thì cái mảng đó bên Phương cũng làm. Đào tạo ở đây bên Phương trung tâm Phương làm chính là đào tạo doanh nghiệp. Tại vì bản thân cái từ SEP ấy, nó là Small Enterprise Promotion Training, là focus vào cái mô hình các doanh nghiệp vừa và nhỏ. Thì bên Phương có đào tạo về các lĩnh vực về đổi mới sáng tạo. Trong mảng về kinh doanh quốc tế thì có những khóa về quản trị xuất nhập khẩu và marketing xuất nhập khẩu. Thì những cái khóa học đó sẽ kết hợp với thực tiễn là gì? Các anh chị có thể học online, cái thời dịch bọn Phương tổ chức học online, hết dịch một cái là đưa các học viên là đại diện của các doanh nghiệp luôn đi sang trực tiếp bên thị trường Đức. Cũng giống như các bạn đi trực tiếp qua bên này, bên Phương cũng làm những hoạt động như cho mình, giống như cho các bạn này ở Đức cũng đến trực tiếp với kết nối với các cái doanh nghiệp, rồi những cái đầu mối, cơ quan đầu mối. Dạ rồi, chút nữa Phương sẽ nói thêm, bây giờ để dành cho chia sẻ.
Okay. Good morning, xin chào. Good morning.
thanks very much for having me. Yeah, it's a great pleasure being here in Vietnam and to talk to you. My name is Günther. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lexatex. We are active in. We have an office in Berlin where we got founded, and we also have an office in Singapore. And I'm in Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, quite often. So please feel free to. Look, I want to make this interactive. Okay. So push the fast forward button, ask questions. All right. Otherwise, it will be really boring. What we do is we do two things. We build software, AI software, to help manufacturing companies, but we also have software to let others build software for manufacturing companies, right? So either we have a solution and we go to a plant and we help them to optimize their manufacturing, or we give the software to someone else and then they build the solution. So actually our customers are typically very large, right? So our customers are like the OEMs that build cars like Mercedes or Stellantis, or the very large tier 1 manufacturers like Schaeffler. Actually, one of our customers is in Bien Hoa, and that's Schaeffler. They build bearings, a very complex product, and so they use our software. So that's a reference in Vietnam. And other companies, they include, for example, Freudenberg. They have injection molding machines, and they produce plastic parts, also complex plastic parts where they combine plastics with metal parts, for example. And other companies like Weidmüller, for example, they also work in injection molding. So look, the part is if AI is a great buzzword, right? So if you can pronounce it correctly, AI, then you do get attention, right? Everybody's like, oh, how cool is this? We do AI and then everything is going to be great, right? But that doesn't work that way, right? So and actually, if we work with a large corporate, they don't really care if it's AI or some other magic that we use. They just want to get their problem solved, right? And they're not, oh, you're providing AI and that's so cool, and here we give you money. It doesn't work that way, right? So they have a number of issues, and our job is to have an answer for these issues. And the issues these large corporates typically have is in order to roll out AI, you need data, right? And everybody's like, oh, how cool is this? We have a lot of data. But then you ask them, so show it to me, right? And they're like, it's not that easy, right? So where do we get this data from? And the second issue is, so assume they have the data, then it's a lot of complexity, right? So, and then the company is like, oh, that's great. We have 2 students working on this, right? But that doesn't work that way. So it has to be a bit more professional. Then the next issue is, let's assume you have a solution, then the company asks you, well, that's great, but I have 300 people and they need to be working with this solution, right? And you're like, well, how do I scale it, right? So it's one plant, not only working for 2 people, but for 300. So how do we scale this? And then if you answer this question, the next question is, you need to talk to the IT department, and then they're like, oh yeah, here is my list of security requirements, right? So we have to have an answer for this too. And then the next department shows up, and it's the compliance department. And they're like, okay, well, here are 1,000 more questions, right? How do you answer them? So we have to have an answer for all of these questions if we work with large corporates, and that's what our software does. Okay, so we have basically a piece of software, and it plugs into the systems that you find at larger corporates. It reads the data, it does the security and the compliance thing and the scaling and so on. So having said that, what's it really doing? So there are two things, right? There are two things that we do. That is, as I mentioned earlier, either we have ready-made solutions, and I'm going to run you through some of these solutions. I'm going to show you some examples on how this works on a real shop floor. But so these are ready-made solutions. So let's say a company like Schaeffler shows up and they're like, okay, I need scheduling, right? Fine scheduling for my shop floor. Then we have a solution for this. And we go to the company, we go to Schaeffler in Tianhua, and then we parameterize that, and then they have a solution. But many times, we don't have a ready-made solution. So the company has, they have a problem that we've never heard of it, and they ask, okay, can we use AI to solve this? Or can we use data that we have to solve this, right? And then what we give them is a piece of software with building blocks. And I'm going to show you an example also in a minute. And with these building blocks, they can build their own solution. And then either the company does that or we help them to do it, right? So they have building blocks and they say, here's my data. In the next step, analyze it in a certain way. In the next step, visualize it. In the next step, plug it into my existing systems, right? So here are ready-made solutions like scheduling. We just plug it in. And here's a system where the customer can build their own solution, right? So actually, I prepared a little demo. So if you're interested in that, join me in that room. I made it speak Vietnamese. Okay, so it will speak to you in Vietnamese. So let me run you through a couple of examples. Very briefly. So for example, a company like Schaeffler, right? Over in Tianhua, building bearings is pretty complex, right? You think it's like little metal balls. Well, how hard can that be, right? But it turns out it is pretty difficult. So they have many production lines. I believe in that one plant there are like 7 or 8 different production lines. For each of these production lines, they have to make decisions, like when do I schedule what specific part, at what time, what team, right? And then where do I get the raw material from? Do I have it in the warehouse? What warehouse is it exactly? Is it a warehouse that's close by and it only takes 2 hours to get the raw materials? Is it a warehouse that's 5 hours away? Do I build that part in-house, right? Because I have the capacity and raw materials, or do I source it externally? A lot of questions just for this one subcomponent, right? And then they have to make decisions like, okay, I have 150 machines here, so what part do I produce at what time? And then this line feeds into the next line, feeds into the next line. Pretty complex, right? So they have 25 people sitting there in the planning department, and all day long they do nothing else but run their Excel sheets, right? And then someone calls up and they're like, oh, we've got a machine failure, and oh, I've got a missing part, right? And then everybody goes crazy and then they do their Excel sheet again and they have to redo the calculation. In the worst part, machines run idle. That's very bad, right? Because then the plant manager gets very excited and there's going to be a lot of pressure, right? And then the headquarters from Singapore calls in, and then the headquarters from Germany calls in, and everybody is like super excited. So we don't want that. It takes about 3 days to come up with a fine plan for the shop floor, right? So that's a very long time. So if things go wrong and the machines are idle, that's very bad. And if they have to redo the plan, again, it takes like 2.5 or 3 days. They want to do it faster. So the system that we deploy helps them to reduce the time it takes to build that fine plan from like these 3 days down to a couple of hours. Actually, it's like 30 minutes or so calculating the fine plan. But after like anywhere between 30 minutes to 3 hours, they have a new fine plan. So whenever things go wrong, now they push a button and they get a new fine plan, right? And here are some numbers. So if you work with German companies, they really like numbers. So you have to show them, okay, previously it took you 3 days, now it takes you only 30 minutes or 3 hours to have that fine plan, right? And then they can do their additional calculation, saying, okay, here's my other KPI like OEE, how do I improve my OEE? And so we've got to help them to calculate these numbers, right? So that's one of the solutions that we roll out. But look, here's a question for you. This kind of solution, it works for a large corporate, right? They have to have a team to understand the solution. They have to have the capacity to roll it out. They have to have IT systems that provide us with the data, right? So ERP, we need to be able to talk to the warehousing software. We need to import the quantities. We need to understand what's the quantity they have produced already on the shop floor, right? And then it's not okay to come like 3 days later saying, oh yeah, like last week, Wednesday, that's what I produced, right? We need this more in like real time, right? So we need to interact with these systems. We need to be able to ask these systems, what have you produced in the last hour, right? So this is, and that's why we currently work with the larger corporates. But here's the question for you. How do we break this down? How do we make it easier for smaller companies to work with this, right? And then if you have a good idea, please talk to me, because that's exactly what we're currently trying to do, right? And let me show you another solution. So this is what we roll out at Mercedes at the plant in Sindelfingen, right, in Germany, where they produce the E and S classes. So I've seen a lot of S-Class Mercedes here, and actually Maybach. I've seen more Maybach here in Saigon than I've ever seen in Germany, okay?
We are richer.
So congratulations. Actually, there are more Maybach than S-Classes here, right? At least from what I've seen on the streets. So the problem they have is, again, look, it's a pretty complex manufacturing process, and if the car moves along the conveyor belt, and at every single station they add a part. They add the power windows, they add the steering, I don't know, they add the engine, and at every single station they add something else. And at every single station you see that young gentleman operating the terminal, right? At every single station they probe the car and they get data from the car, and you see these little black boxes here in the car. Like in an S-Class or in a Maybach, you have like 100 up to 120 or so of these control units, and they control everything from the engine to the power windows and everything, right? So at every single station, they probe the car and they read if there is any error in the car or if everything works fine. If there are errors, then if it's a small error, they can fix it, right? But if it's a big error that reoccurs, then everybody gets really, really, really excited, because that's really, really bad, right? And the way they solve this problem today is they have a team coming in from a different plant, and they solve basically the problem by looking at it, right? They're like, gee, okay, I've seen something similar like a year ago, and let's try to fix it this way, right? But that takes a very long time. Sometimes it takes a month or 2 months or so, right, to fix this problem. So what they asked is, can we reduce that time? in order to identify the root cause earlier and faster. So what we're doing there is we read in all the data from the little black boxes. We know the process data. We know for every single car, we know all the features. For every car, there are like 6,500 features. So you can, every car is more or less highly individualized, right? So there are basically no two same Maybachs on the streets of Saigon. And that makes it very complicated. And so we read in all of this data, and we help Mercedes to reduce the time it takes to identify this root cause, right? So from weeks down to days. And that saves them a lot of money, right? And let me show you another solution. That is Freudenberg. If you are in injection molding, then you probably know Freudenberg. They mostly supply parts to automotive, and again, it's pretty complex parts, right? So where you have plastics, they interact with metal, they have to be put together, and it's not super straightforward, right? And so they have a couple of problems. So for example, even if you have the same machine, the same injection molding machine, like this here, and you have 150 and it has the same label, they behave differently. And the operator on the shop floor, they know that these machines behave differently. So let's say if there is an order coming in, the operator, they know exactly that, okay, this component I need to produce on a specific machine, right? Even though it has the same label. And they also know that for specific components, they have to parameterize this machine differently, right? A little bit more heat, a little bit less pressure, or I don't know, be nice to the machine and pet it at a specific part. That's what they know. But this is implicit knowledge that is not known to other operators. And so what we did for Freudenberg, we read in all the data. We know the components, and the data that's measured from the raw material is called rheology data, right? So they actually measure the raw material that's coming in. We know that data as well. We know the historic scrap rates and so on. And then we answer two questions for Freudenberg. So number one is, how do I have to parameterize the machines for a specific component? And with that knowledge, we can reduce the scrap rate and up to a third or so. That's a really large number. And the second question we answer is, again, the scheduling question. Yeah? So what component do I need to produce at what machine, at what time, and so on. And if we do it right, then, so these are real numbers. Depending on the component, we could increase their OEE. OEE is a KPI, is a manufacturing KPI that allows them to assess the results. So we could improve their OEE by anywhere between 3 to 17%. Yeah? So 3% is more realistic, 17 is a marketing number. Some components we could increase OEE by 17%, but 3% is realistic. So if you do the math, let's say they make a million turnover a year, you increase OEE by 3%, so we are talking about roughly 30,000 euros, and then you can quantify it, right? So you use our software, we answer these questions, and then we've shown that we can improve by about 3%. So these are solutions that we have ready, and we can go to the customer and we can roll it out, right? But now there is a second type of solution that I mentioned earlier that I would like to show you, like in a small video or inside a room, where we can actually have it talk to you in Vietnamese and show you how that works. But let me see if I have something here. So this is the second type of solution I mentioned earlier, where we actually let the customer build their own solution, or we give the software to someone else and they can build the solution, right? And I'm going to show you in a video some sample solutions, but the way it works is you have little boxes, and these little boxes, they tell you, okay, here's my data source. Yeah, that could be an ERP, or that could be SAP, or it could be as simple as here are my files from my SharePoint. Yeah, so very simple. So here's the data source, more data sources, and then we have what we call special purpose AIs. These are proprietary solutions, AIs, that we have built, and some of them you see here. Yeah? So pretty specific for identified turbine anomalies. So we work with turbine manufacturers and operators. It's mostly hydropower turbines. So this is a ready-made digital clone that we have built. You can plug that in, and you have a solution for turbine. But that also works for satellite image analysis or other solutions. Here's the shop floor scheduling that I mentioned earlier. So the way it works is the customer drags and drops boxes, they connect the workflow and plug in the AI they want. And now also you can plug in a language model, for example. And then you can parameterize it or configure it in a way that you can actually talk to these solutions. So you're like, here's a document, and tell me if this is ROHS compliant, right? That is one of the solutions that we've built with this drag and drop, no code system. It's pretty simple to operate. And our idea, and again, here's the question to you guys. Our idea is we would like to start working with smaller companies, yeah? Because there is a limited supply of the very large ones. So, and I think the mid-sized companies, they would benefit a lot from these solutions. But look, let's be very transparent and very honest. We have customers, for example, in Singapore. Yeah? And in Singapore, we compete not against other software providers, but you can guess it, we compete against humans, right? So, so I show up and we're like, hey, look, we have this cool system and it's going to save you a lot of money, right? And it's going to make you very happy and so on. And they're like, no, I don't think so, because I hire 10 people from Malaysia and they're less expensive than your system, right? So we, if we talk to smaller companies, we compete against humans actually. And that is an issue perhaps we have to discuss for Vietnam as well, right? So let's be very transparent, and I'm very interested in getting your feedback, because so for larger corporates, we can show here are the numbers, but for smaller companies, we need to discuss if that makes sense or how we have to adapt our solutions, right? And so some of the solutions that we've built with this no-code system, they mostly include tasks in the back office, like in documentation, for example. And what I just mentioned is ROHS compliance, ROHS. I personally never heard about this, right? But if you provide parts, plastic parts, for example, or if you provide electronics, right? Then if you want to sell electronics to Germany or to the EU, at one point someone will ask you, oh, is your product ROHS compliant, right? If it was me, I was like, I don't know, right? How would I know? And but there is a process defined for this, and we can plug this in, and then you drop your documentation, because at some point you will have to have a documentation that says, here are the parts that I in my electronics, right? So like the two gentlemen that presented earlier. So here are the parts, and I know exactly how much lead is in there and what other kind of materials are in there. And then you just dump that documentation, and the system is going to tell you, yes, it's RoHS compliant, and here are the reasons, right? Because lead is below a certain threshold, or there are a number of exceptions, and the system is going to do it automatically, right? And if you ask it to,